So I'd like to give a brief overview of the Project One. Some of you may have never done any work in Excel before, and so if you haven't, this is probably for you. This is your first project. It's on tornado times in this 1974 period. And so you have 7 different questions that you need to answer, and several of those are related to creating graphs in Excel. This problem was taken from Michael Sullivan's book, 5th edition of Statistics. I've taken the data and parsed it out here so that you are able to use this data to create your graphs. So the data that you see here in these columns match the tornado duration times from the problems. The idea is that we have all these tornadoes that occurred, and several of them in that period in 1974. And there were some weak ones on the low scale, on the F0 scale, and there were some very strong ones on the F5 scale. So those are ordinal level values there. And if you just look over the data, you can maybe see some patterns. These data values that you're seeing there are the number of minutes that the tornado was actually on the ground. So you can see those F0 tornadoes, many, many ones there. So they're very, very brief. And maybe you'll see a pattern as you look down the rest of those scales. And it's always a good idea when you're doing data analysis is to take a look at the raw data, which is what we would call this here. But eventually we want to summarize it in a table and print it out and display it in a nice visualization, a nice graph. Data here, what I've done is for our project, there are several graphs. Project number 1 is a stem and leaf plot. And you can do it right here if you want. These are the F3 scale tornadoes. And there's a nice little feature here in a stem and leaf plot. You might notice as you look through these data values that they range from, the single digits to maybe all the way up to 60, maybe even further. So a useful feature is the sort. If you've never seen this, all you have to do is to sort the data, is to highlight the data you want to sort, and then come on up here to the data and sort. And you can see that it's going to sort on F3, and it's going to sort the values from smallest to largest. You could, if you wanted, also sort from largest to smallest. Then we say OK, and what you should see is this data is now sorted. And this will make it a lot easier for you to fill out your stem and leaf plot. Remember to include a title. The reader has to know what this graph is about. Include a legend, identify what each stem means and what each leaf means, and then put them together in a legend, a little graphic off to the side that says, here's what one of these data values means. 2 vertical lines, 7 means, and then you spell it out what it means. In graph number 2, these are all of the tornado times. So you're supposed to do a histogram of all of the tornado times. So these were the original F scales, individuals, but what I've done is to copy all this data and put it into one single column here, the A column. So you can see it goes all the way down to about 151. And so I'm going to highlight this data, and we're going to create a histogram here. So usually you highlight the data with Excel charts. You highlight the data you're interested in graphing. You come up and say Insert, come on over to select the graph that matches the one that you want to construct. And here it is. It pretty much comes up with a finished, not a finished, but an almost finished without the bells and whistles graph. So for example, if you were doing data analysis, data exploration, you might stop here. You've designed this graph. You know what those numbers at the bottom mean. You know what those numbers along the left scale mean, and you know what the theme of this is. It's all these different tornado times. And so you would look immediately and see it skewed right, and maybe that would be enough of the visualization for you to get what you want. However, if you're going to present it to somebody, then you want to supply all the bells and whistles. So you want to select on the title, double click on it, maybe a couple times, and put in a title, tornado times. So you make that up yourself. On my computer, up here in the upper left, it says add a chart element. Sometimes if you don't see it, if you expand the window, you can see it. But down here, we'll have all the things that you want to add. And you definitely need to add the vertical axis. It's not very interesting, but it should always be labeled. So without a label, you don't know if those are percentages or what they mean. In this case, it's just the number of tornadoes of that time. And so we would interpret this as this is the minute scale, and anywhere from 0 to say 15 minutes, we had a lot of tornadoes. We had 77-ish, 78-ish maybe. So many, many tornadoes in that short frequency time. And as the times get longer and longer, then the number of tornadoes of that length will shrink. But over here, we're just counting up the tornadoes. So you want to say count or frequency or something like that. And then you can come up and add the horizontal axis title as well. And down here, you want to say something that this is, minutes. Now, I don't like the way that Excel works with this scale down here, because remember, with histograms, that horizontal scale down there is supposed to be a uniform scale. I really don't like this, but we get a sense of what we're talking about here. It's good enough information. If you did have time, you could come down here and put basically get rid of this scale and come down and maybe put your own little tick marks down here. And if you ever want to add anything to your graph, so come up here and insert a text box. You could just create a box and then write the number 0 in there or something, and then just bring it down and just put it. And you can configure if you wanted, and if it's pretty tedious work, but you could actually put a horizontal scale on there if you wanted to. Okay, let's go on to the next one, which is the one where we're going to do a power 2 graph. And this is the community size. So where did these tornadoes hit and how many deaths occurred? And you have the different scale tornadoes. Remember that the stronger the tornado, the higher the F scale. And so we got the different types of communities, ranging from the most rural ones to the most urban. And you can see most of them hit in rural areas. That makes sense because the country is made up of more rural areas than the large city areas. If you're going to graph your data, the community size and death, those are not really part of your data. The data are the categories and the numbers. So highlight those and then come up as you did before, but just select the different graph, the bar graph. And so this is what the bar graph looks like. And when you do it, it comes up pretty much like you wanted it to come up. But remember to put the vertical axis label. Again, this would be not frequency this time, because this vertical axis corresponds to this variable here, deaths. And then down here, this is the type of community, and then give it a title. You can do some interesting things, like if you click on one of these bars, it selects them all. And then if you control click or right click, you can add data labels, and it puts these numbers right on top. You can click on these and format them. These are the called the data labels. And if you click on them, you can format those data labels, and a chart will come up over here. And I like to put it inside the end so that the bars actually are the heights. You put the numbers on there, then it makes the bars look higher than they normally are. Of course, then I have to come in here and change the text color to white just to make those numbers show up. And over here, you can see this one might be a little problematic here. It's so small, but that looks okay. So you can add some bells and whistles on. You can change the color of those bars, and all of that is done over here. The fill is the fill of the bars. I'd have to select them. Then I can come over here, and this is the paint can, and I could maybe vary colors by point, that kind of thing. And so you can spruce it up a little bit if you like, but all that's optional. What isn't optional are the axes labels and the axes label and the title. Yeah, so in this multiple box plot, this is an excellent graph or to display when you are going to compare two sets of numerical data, because it draws these box plots on the same numerical scale, and you can see if one set of data is shifted to the left or to the right of the other. One is shifted to the small side if one set of values are much larger or much smaller than the others. So to draw the graph, you just kind of, highlight the data you're interested in. And even if one column ends, you can just go ahead and go all the way down to the bottom of the second set of data and then insert. This one, it's not as clear where it is, but I can show you it's right here in this histogram menu, and it's this one here. It's going to draw two different vertical box plots. And this is what it looks like. So there they are. This one is meaningless. It's down at the bottom. I'm going to get rid of it. You may want to extend this a little bit to make it a little longer. There's only one variable measured here, and that's the one over there. So what do these numbers mean? And so that's what you have to figure out from this data. And you notice a 124 here, and so here are your outliers. You should describe those outliers. What happened then? What was the big event at that point? And why were those 2 points so extremely unusual than the others? Yeah, so we're comparing F2 or F1 times to F4 times, and you can see as you're in your description, look how this graph is shifted down toward the lower numbers, and this graph is shifted up toward the much higher numbers, much longer lengths. So in your explanation, you want to describe this relationship in the context of tornado times and the different F scales. For example, you should say something like, are the longer tornado times, are those caused more by the F4 tornadoes, or are those caused more by the F1 tornadoes? And in the last one, this is your multiple frequency polygon. And this one, we're comparing the F2 scale tornadoes to the F3 scale tornadoes. It would be very useful in this one because we're going to create by hand the multiple frequency polygon, if done by default here, is not very interesting, and it's definitely not what we want. The one we want comes from a frequency distribution like we did in class. And what we're going to do is we're going to draw the same classes for each of the F2 and the F3 tornadoes. We'll pick out the midpoint of each class, and then we'll draw the frequency. We'll identify the frequency of the F2s and the frequencies of the F3s, and then we'll compare them. Then we'll draw the graph from there. But we've got a little bit of work to organize the data before we draw the graph. So I'm going to let you do this. Let me say again that it's wise of you, particularly when you're counting frequencies, to highlight the data. You can sort these lists one at a time. Come over to data, sort. We're not going to expand the selection, so continue with the selection that we identified, and then we're going to sort it. Sort the F2s, and from smallest to largest. Okay. It's kind of weird here, but it does this sometime. Now, if I scroll up and then I scroll back down, notice it's fixed them. But so I'm not sure what that bug is, but if that happens to you too, just scroll up, scroll down. All right. And now I want to do the sort the next list. So I'm going to select even the F3, because remember, it allows us to select that we do have a column heading, and data. And then we're going to sort. We do want to continue with just that little selected section there. And we want to sort in ascending order. That column F3. Doesn't look like much happened, but let me do that old scroll up and scroll down thing again. And so you can see some differences already when you sort. The largest value goes down to 58, and the upper one starts at 0. So I'm just going to make something up here, and just so I can give you something that you can see, I want you to figure this one out. All right, so let's just suppose that these were the numbers, and then I'm just going to calculate the midpoint, and then I'm going to throw in some imaginary frequencies for F2 and F3. Okay, so I just created this new frequency distribution. It does not match this data here. I want you to come up with these numbers yourself. I will point out that, remember, for this frequency polygon, we add, after we graph all of the points associated with our classes, that is, the midpoint is the X coordinate and the frequency is the Y coordinate. We've got two frequencies because we're going to draw two graphs, and we put 1 point at the beginning on the front end, equally spaced from the previous midpoint, and we add one more point at the end. Both of them are on the horizontal scale, so you're going to see these two graphs begin and end at the same place. Okay, let's take a look. It's fairly straightforward. Once you get this table done, then go ahead and just go select your midpoint as your X, and then the frequency of the F2s and the frequency of the F3s would be your two different Ys. And if you just select all the data like this, let's see if we can insert the multiple frequency polygon, and this is the guy that you want. Let's go ahead and draw that. And as you can see, it threw in something there that we weren't all that interested in, and we'll have to deal with that. That's a blue curve. So if you look at these frequencies here, you can see that in my graph, the F2 frequencies got bigger faster, and then they kind of puttered out at the end. So that's the orange graph. We will change the name of the series. And the F3 graphs, they started a little bit slowly, but then they got up there very quickly and then went down here. So the highest frequency really that we need looks like about 30 for any one of these, as you can see from my data, but you'll have to adjust your coordinate accordingly. Okay, so this is how you would tidy this up. To tidy up the vertical axis, which is the frequency, you would want to label get rid of the blue curve here. You'd want to go ahead and remember the blue curve is series 1. That's the one you want to get rid of. Series 2 is the F2 scale, and series 3 is the F3 scale. So you can come on into the graph and just anywhere in the graph and then control click or right click, and you can come in here and select the data, and it allows you to update this scale. Now remember, series 1 was the one that we wanted to get rid of. So while series 1 is highlighted, I'm just going to get rid of it that way. Series 2, I want to name it. Those are the F2 tornadoes. All right, and then when we come down to series 3, we're going to label that one or name that one the F3 tornadoes. And if I go back up to F2, you can see F3 has changed. So I've got names for them. So those series are all set. I got rid of the blue graph, and I think I'm good to go here. Much better graph there. And you can clearly see the trend. You know, the more you look at the graph, you know, make sure it's accurate. You know, for example, this one here, yeah, I think these are the frequencies. I think these, it nailed it with the frequencies here. But I mean, if you look at my midpoints, it looks like my midpoints go from -3 to 33, and I don't know what this scale is here. So it's definitely not picking up the midpoint. So let me click on that. That's not what I want. So I better go back in and select what I do want. And I'm going to go back in here and select the data. And you'll notice that we're good on the Y values. The frequencies are great. But down here, this is the horizontal scale. Notice there's nothing in here. Well, let's go ahead and click on this one. And then let's go select these midpoints there. And then just hit the return or enter. And then you've got your correct X values down here in the horizontal axis. All right, then okay. And there they are. And all of the points are plotted. This one down here, you're still going to want to give it a name. Remember, it's the midpoint of a class, but the midpoint of the classes themselves are right here. And what do these mean? Ooh, let's go peek over there at the data. Oh, those are the number of minutes that the tornado was up in the air. And so those tornadoes of frequency F2 that were up in the air 0 to 5 minutes, there were 25 different tornadoes of that sort. So this is minutes down here, and you'd want to indicate that accordingly. And you might be saying to yourself, oh boy, the data values go all the way to 58. That graph is wrong. It's missing 40 and 50 and 58. But remember, when we started this, I said this was made up data. You have to create the graph that makes sense for our data, not this fake data. All right, very good. Due on February 20th. Good luck, and let me know if you have any difficulties, or if you just want to go on a Zoom and share your screen, and if you can't figure something out, we can work through it. Very good. Talk to you next week. Good luck with the project. Go ahead and go to the e-learning site of Delta and go into the content folder. I did send you an email, and you may have the data file already, but if not, it's sitting in the Monday, February 6th folder, Project 1 Excel download. This is one of those where you don't click on it. If you click on it, then it'll take you to a file you really can't read. You want to click this right down arrow, and then go all the way down here to download. And you should see something happening on your machine to indicate that the file is being downloaded. My files go to the download folder. Yours might go to your desktop, but wherever they go, you'll want to make sure you know where that is, because you're going to have to know where it is so that you can import it into Delta's version of Excel. So after you get this data file onto your machine, saved onto your machine, then you want to go ahead and go over to Delta's email system. It's Outlook 360. Not only do you get your email there, but you can download any of the Microsoft Office products, including Microsoft Word, and Excel is the one we want, PowerPoint, and so on. Okay, so however you log into your email, eventually you're going to get there. And if you do, up here in this upper left, looks like 9 dots. When you click on that, you'll see here are all the Microsoft Office apps that we have. And the one you want is Excel. So just go ahead and click on it, and a version of Excel will come up. You can work online like this with creating an Excel spreadsheet from scratch. But what you want to do, it might not be on the first screen, but look for the upload. And, it might be down a little bit, but you might have to scroll a little bit up or down, but you want to upload that file that you just downloaded. And so I'm going to click on that button. And when I do, this comes up, and I know that it's in my downloads folder because that's exactly where I put that file. So there it is, sure enough. So you would click on that and then open it. With any luck, the project will come right up. And just like the first part of the video, down here, you're going to see your tabs, and you can scroll through them. There's one for problem 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Just remember that there's a couple more here. Compute the summary statistics. And then you have to write your overall summary. So the overall summary should really say in a couple of paragraphs everything you know about these tornadoes, the relationship between the times that the tornadoes are up in the air and the scale, the F scale, and the way that the tornado times vary for each one of the F scales. So there's a lot of variation there as well. It's not always the case that the ones that have the lowest F scale are going to have the shortest every time. Okay, so for the compute the summary statistics for the F4 tornado times. And so I see all of those. I might just go ahead and copy this. I will come over here and create a new file, and that new sheet, I'll name it number 6. And then I can drag number 6 down to the other side. I'm going to paste that. I want the F4 tornadoes. So I'm going to come over here and copy this and take it on over to 6 and paste it on in, right in there. And for this one, we want the summary statistics. So they would be exactly like, think about the one variable statistics on the graphing calculator. You've got the mean and the median and the mode, not the mode, but the quartiles, the various versions of standard deviations. The purpose here is just to go ahead and do the same thing. So let me just take these and write them vertically, mean, median, and so on. Yeah, so just take all of those and just give it a heading so you know which one is which. This is just, I just typed all this stuff in here. It's all text. The way that you tell Excel that you're about to enter in a formula is to hit the equal sign. For mean, it's average, and then come over here and select the numbers that you want to average. Those. And then all you have to do is come over and end the parentheses, and it goes and calculates the average. So in here, I'm going to type in equals and then median. Maybe the word median will do it. Yeah, that's going to do it. So you see a higher mean than a median. That means that this is a right-skewed graph. The median gets moved toward the tail of the lower frequencies. Now the mode, remember, this is the one where you kind of come in here and it's, you got to count them up. What's the most frequent? And we've done this before, but let's do it again. I'm now working inside the cloud version of Excel, and I want to sort in ascending order. This is descending order. And I think it's as easy as just clicking this button. We don't want to expand and sort. We just want to sort. And here you see the big ones are down at the bottom and the smaller ones up toward the top. But now you can go through and you can count the number of each data value and pick out the one that is the most popular. For mid-range, this one uses the max and the mins. So we come down to minimum and just type in equals min, I believe is the abbreviation, spelled correctly. And then I'm going to select these numerical data values. Close it off, hit enter. And if I just come up here and copy this one paste it down into here, but just change the min to max, always looking for quicker ways to enter things in. Yeah, that's the largest value. You can see 16 is the smallest, and so on. Now, the quartiles, you have equals, you have the word quartile, and again, you give the data range. In this one, you have to give it another argument, and the other argument is which quartile do you want? So do you want the first quartile, the third quartile? In this one, we want the first quartile. So we'll just put in the number 1, hit enter, and there it is. The third quartile is done in a very similar way. So instead of having to type it all in, I'm just going to go ahead and paste it up in here and change the 1 to a 3. Now the mid-range is equal to, and what you can do here is you can take the minimum, remember it's the midpoint between the max and the min. And so you can just come down here and select the cell where the maximum number is, and it calls up the cell F13, then you type in a plus sign, and the other number you want to add together is the minimum, which is sitting in this cell, and then you close it off, you add those two numbers together, and then divide by 2, and there's the mid-range. The range, again, equals, and then you have max minus min. That's the definition of the range, max minus min. And of course, this function does not work if I just type in something max minus min. It understands cells, it doesn't understand, everyday language that we use. So let's get rid of that, and let's refer to the cells where the max and the min are. So we're going to take the max, which is this number here, and then we'll enter manually the minus sign, and then we'll select the cell where the minimum is, and then hit enter, and everything works out well. Yeah, and so for the standard deviation, let's just start typing in STDEV, I think is what it is. Now, at this point, you can give the sample standard deviation, or you can give the population standard deviation .p. And again, it's just a standard deviation of a single set of data, so all you have to do is select that data. Don't select the F4. And it gives you the standard deviation. And for sample variance, I'm going to type in equals. I'm going to recall where the sample standard deviation is, and then I'm going to raise it to the second power with that notation there, the hat, and then the 2. And then hopefully things work out. So yeah, so those are the F4 numbers. And so you need to create this spreadsheet and report those numbers. And of course, the mode. Okay, so let me know if you need help getting started. Sometimes it's tedious to get everything up and running. And if you have any questions on how to generate the graphs, we can have a Zoom session and you can show me your screen and tell me where you're stuck, and we can go from there. Okay, good luck.